Well, I think we're live now. Hello, everybody. This is Daniel here from the FMCG guys for another live session. We're getting used to this. I like the habit. I'm actually connecting live from Amsterdam today. This is not my house. I wish it were, but I'm connecting from beautiful Amsterdam, sitting actually standing next to the canal, which you can actually see on my screen, just making you a bit jealous. And I'm accompanied by my colleague, adventure companion in the podcast, Christine Nicolau. How are you?
Hi, Daniel, adventure companion and friend. I'm doing very, very well. Not close to a nice canal, just at home in Athens, very cloudy.
Very cloud. Well, here the day has been amazing. I was just meeting with one of the guests that we had recently on the podcast, Ruja Rosendahl from Vegetarian Butcher. We're sitting outside, getting a bit of a tan, and getting ready for this webinar. I needed to be a good tan before going live, right? So
Of
here we
course, you
go.
did.
Right? So this is the third of the webinars that we've done with Nielsen IQ, and they've all had the same co-host, which has been Salim Bachatene. How are you?
I'm very good. From Boston today, beautiful Boston. So yeah, very happy to be here. And the topic is amazingly important. So I'm glad that we're going to talk, and I'm glad to have Boris, of course.
Boris is a return guest on the podcast. He was on the podcast. Was it Boris in 2023?
23, yes, I think it was even twice we did a recording, right? The first one I think I remember it was on talent and what's needed in order to evolve in digital commerce, I believe. And it's 3 years ago.
There's a funny story there that I went to record another podcast with Henkel, and I told Boris, I think on the day or the day before, hey, do you want to record a podcast with me? And we kind of went there unprepared, but I think it went very well. So he's a repeat guest. I think that's a good sign already.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed it a lot, and also I'm very excited to be here as well. Well, Danny, I don't have the same beautiful view as you have on the canal. I'm sitting in Düsseldorf, and it's not cloudy. We actually have the sun, but I had to lower the shades. I'm sitting in a phone booth in the office, but very excited about the topic today.
Yeah, totally. Like, why? I'm gonna ask you, Christina, first of all, like, why do you think that the topic today, which reminder is commerce data? So actually, in the episodes that we've done with Nielsen IQ, we've talked about retail media incrementality, then about agentic shopping. Now we're talking about data. Why is it important, Christine? Is it maybe then the non-sexy part of e-commerce?
The non-sexy part. Well, of everything, I would say, because you need to keep in mind that data goes through the whole value chain, right? And not just what goes through e-com. I was looking at a little graph the other day, like, how do they call, like a sketch, and it had like an iceberg with the LT looking at the tip of the iceberg and go like, AI, yes, this is going to save everything. Let's just go full in. And then underneath the iceberg, you had all the infrastructure that's actually needed, and the people kind of like on a submarine trying to fix the basis that was very, very, let's say, unstable. And that's all the infrastructure. Like, this is, as we say, for AI, it's BS in, BS out. And no one cares about fixing the in part because it's not sexy. So I think it's the most important thing to understand what is the need and the fundamentals. And of course, as we're moving more towards the digital on the commerce side as well, it's crucial to even be able to deliver your business.
Totally. Well, let's go into it. I think, Christine, from the split of questions that we have, that we prepared, what did you prepare before the session? You have the first question.
I do, and that's on Boris, actually, and we haven't really introduced him properly with his title.
Oh, that's true. You're right.
So first of all, Boris, would you like to tell the audience what you do?
Yes, thank you. So, look, I'm working for Henkel Consumer Brands. We are managing brands in laundry care and hair, home care. Probably some of the known ones are Schwarzkopf or Persil, all in the US. And I'm leading the global e-commerce, the digital commerce team.
Fantastic. And you're leading e-commerce, and yet here you are talking about data. Would you like to tell everybody why is, for you, data important, and what do you do?
I think I've been around e-commerce for quite a while, and what I remember that in the beginning, 6 years ago, a lot of people were shying away from the data topic because simply it wasn't available. When you think about data in an offline environment and the big providers like Nielsen or Circana, offline data has been structured, it has been at people's fingertips, but in digital commerce, it simply hasn't been there. So what I've experienced is that a lot of teams and pre-success were making decisions based on gut feel. And I'm a strong believer in you manage what you measure. Yeah, so I always wanted to move away from that gut feel into more data-driven decisions. And you can only make this if you have a strong data foundation.
By the way, let me do some housekeeping since we're doing it live. Since we have a live audience, if anyone wants to ask a question, please write it in the comment section. We will reply it either during the conversation if we feel like it's relevant at the moment, or we can also do at the end, we'll do some Q&A as well. Salim,
just before you go, I just wanted to jump into Boris' comment. So I think Boris was the first person ever that challenged us on the data, and I think that's why like the topic today and having Boris with us is incredibly insightful, because I remember at the time no one was caring about this. Like the granularity, the cleanness, the fact that the data was structured, and these were like super interesting conversations we were having 6 years ago, where everyone was not there. So I think now, 6 years after, with the emergence of AI and so on and so forth, this is where this topic becomes super, super important, and that's why I think it's going to be a good conversation.
Do you guys feel like you've been vindicated?
No, so it's hard to bring a topic that is not super attractive because it's messy, it requires hard work, it requires attention, it requires resources, it requires like so many different things. Obviously, like it's so much easier to kind of keep it like marketing in a way, not like being bad to the marketing people, but like this is like a topic where you have to be a bit nerdy in a way, which I am, and so I think over time we evolved a lot though. So I think Boris, with a lot of the thought leadership, we did too on our side. I think we kind of brought a little bit the industry in a place where we're taking a little bit more care about these things, which is an interesting place to be as we go through the AI revolution.
Yeah. I remember, I think, Salim, you're totally right. And maybe it's because a bit of my background, I have not always worked in digital roles. Huh? I was key account manager and I worked in global trade marketing, and I've always relied on data. So every decision we were making, whether we should do a promotion or not, it was based on data. And then I moved into this e-commerce role and I was like, okay, how do I make the decision? And that was also when we got to know each other. And that's why I challenged a lot, because I wanted to get the data in order to make the right decision, in order to make the business grow. And actually also online, it's not that different. Huh? So when I remember one of the big topics we discussed, distribution in an offline environment is important, availability of the products. And I think you guys were one of the first to actually also looking at in an online environment at store level. We had this project in France, I remember, and it has a huge impact. If you improve the availability on shelf in a digital environment, we generated millions of incremental revenue, which we could measure. And it's not that much different in an offline environment. If you increase in your distribution, which is your availability, you do the same. Huh? So I think this is what I particularly liked, that the experience from what has worked to manage a business offline can also work to manage a business on the digital chat if you have the right data available.
And Salim, when we were preparing for this webinar, I remember we talked about, we called it making commerce data AI ready. And I asked you, like, why don't we just call it making data AI ready? And you said, wait, there's a difference between data and commerce data. What's the difference? Like, what's specific about commerce data, and why is that important ultimately?
So first of all, the reason is I wanted to make sure we attract the right people to the event. But I think so. If we focus on digital, and like a lot of this, Boris covered in the previous question, there was no data, like really no data, and some of the data was very or like too far from reality to be trusted. So he mentioned the example on the distribution, and I like the example you gave, Boris, because I think what you brought is the discipline of the offline world that has been established over decades of work into something like super new, which was kind of establishing a few years ago. And so we moved from a world where there was no data, then we started to kind of see some data. And when we started to see some data, there was some challenges that came with it. First one is the granularity. Like, what are we talking about? If we talk about distribution on an omni-channel retailer, if you don't go down to the zip code or to the postcode, you're not doing anything interesting. So you just kind of taking a sample that most probably is not a good representation of the story. Then you start to ask yourself, like, why am I buying this data? And I'm sure a lot of people would agree, we buy data to take actions. Like, you measure and then you take actions. And there is no way to create actions in the digital world, and I guess in the offline world also, if you don't go down to the SKU level. Then the next step is, when you get the data, you want to ingest. You want to enrich the data. You want to enhance the action or the activation. And that requires cross-referencing. And as soon as you want to cross-reference, you need the data to be structured, labeled, coded. And these are the things, sadly, we didn't talk about at all. So it was incredibly hard 6 years ago to put those topics on the table. And I'm super excited because in the last 6 to 12 months, it became important, because now we know that if we want to apply an AI agent to extract faster insights, if I want to cross-reference, if I want this data to sit well in my data lake, it has to have like certain requirements. And in my point of view, what we lack in the industry is probably a referential, like, I don't know who can do that, but some sort of standards, like how do you measure search? What is the minimum viable way of measuring search? What is the minimum viable way of measuring availability? Same for content, same for sales, same for like sales if they're estimated, obviously. So I would say the difference between what we live in digital versus the rest of the world is the fact that it's still new. It's still kind of fragmented. I always put myself in the shoes of an e-com person, like having to toggle between different solutions, different data assets to create an insight, to report back, or to create an action. And it's horrible. So, and that's really the point we're trying to kind of solve. Like, not just us, but together with the industry.
Yeah. Fully agree. And I think the data quality and driving actions out of it, this is the most crucial one. Because I think what we need to do even more, looking at the data, taking an action, looking at the data again and see if something changed. Because a lot of times it's just looking at scorecards, yeah, fine, it goes up and down, but we're not really driving actions out of it. And what I've experienced in the past, if you do so, if you look at the data, you take an action and you see if something changed, then you also discover if the data quality is good or bad. If you have a certain availability score and you look all the way down to the SKU level, where do you have the issues, you improve your availability and you see changes in your sales, then you know you're doing the right thing, the data is good, and it has implication on your P&L. And I think this, I could go on and on. This is so true for the chef search, for the content scores as well.
And I guess that the question is like compulsory, like you have commerce data and then you have the rest of data. How do you differ? Like, is it very different, or like it's like putting one and one together?
I would love to put one and one together. I don't know. Read something first, Salim, or I should start?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, because I have two views on this. I have my view, and like I have the company? It's like, it's very interesting question.
No, from a company view, I can say, because I mentioned I have not always worked in a digital environment. And when I think about the data availability, I was used to structured data before I moved into eCommerce. And then we had to build structured data. So they're super fragmented, all the different data sources, and it's a huge amount of effort to get the data in a similar structure as I was used to in an offline environment, like the categorization, all the attributes. This is hard work because it wasn't simply available off the shelf. And I think what also happened is, yes, also we as an organization and many others started to structure the digital commerce data in a certain way, to work with it, to create dashboards. But at one point you experience, you're a bit siloed, huh? You're talking about the same thing, like market shares, you're talking about certain execution KPIs, but it's not the same. You have your online dashboard, your offline dashboard, and you look at it in a different way. You have business reviews because of the different dashboards, like the digital commerce part will always be looked at the very end, and then there's no time on the agenda because it's not integrated. So I think the opportunity now is, and I think what really is the vision, have it all very harmonized through omnichannel, because everybody talks about seamless commerce and omnichannel and connected commerce, you name it, but it starts with the data. If the data is not connected, I mean, how can you be omnichannel? Yeah, so therefore, this is something we're working on a lot, and I really enjoy that AI is supporting on that one already today a lot, because it's not just the agent you can talk to, it's also the AI who can help you to structure the data, and that's very exciting today.
I'm going to give an example. I think best way to answer this question is give an example. So
we love examples.
The example is on digital shelf data, which is my kind of previous or most of my experience is in digital shelf. So digital shelf source of data is scraping, so online data, and we spent years trying to solve the topic that Boris just mentioned. How do you code? How do you match? How do you categorize? And at that time, no one was doing it. And I think still today, not a lot of players are able to do it. And at that time, probably a lot of people were telling us that we were wasting our time. Like it's better to go quicker to the data visualization part and just show kind of insights, as opposed to spend all those resources in setting a clean, structured database. And our response has always been, we strongly believe that the integration and the correlation is the future. So next step of correlation for digital shelf is sales data. If you don't do that, you don't do the impact of your actions, you don't know the reasons of your performance. So it has, you have to have your data set ready for that. And it's really, really difficult. It's really not easy. So we spent years and years trying to solve this challenge, and we did. And then the next level is you bring more data sets, like shopper behavior, sometimes some internal data, like supply chain data, some finance data, and so on and so forth. And the more that you enrich, the more you can do. So that element on structured, so Boris comes from an offline world where everything is super structured because we had time, like decades to set it up. We didn't have that time in e-com. So we had to work incredibly hard to get to that level of readiness. And I don't think we achieve the full potential of it yet. I think there is yet a lot to do, but we're going to get there as long as, we achieve that topic of structured, well-established, coded. I know I'm talking about this product, and I have no doubt that this product is well matched across the different retailers, and I can confidently then ingest and correlate.
Hearing you speak, Salim, I'm wondering on why nobody has done it. I mean, in the past, why people didn't care. I'm thinking, as you speak, correlation, right? Is it a bit of chicken and the egg? Because then an LT would expect you to go with the correlation and prove why you need to do the digital self, because then here's the uplift on sales. Well, now we know nothing and everybody's somehow managing. So why bother with the complexity?
So I think the reason why not it's because it's hard. Too nearly impossible for some people, because you need some specific technology, you need to put the attention on it. And then I don't want to go into the debate of like the whole value chain of how techs are structured. It's about like really pointing that early enough in the value chain as an important and critical component. So back to your point about like presenting to LT, I think we grew up in a world where ecom was known to be imperfect. And we just got along with it, saying, it's ecom, it's not perfect, I'm trying to stitch things together. But I think AI is going to force us to stop taking that as an excuse as an industry and like doing it, really. So that's my personal point of view. I don't know, Boris, if you have a different point of view.
I think this is one part. I believe the other part is you were asking, okay, why was nobody doing it before? Yeah, I think it's connected to how e-commerce has been treated in organizations. Because years back, it has always been just a small portion of the total business, 1%, 2%. And the way it was treated, so companies created small e-com teams. Yeah, okay, you take care of this e-com topic. And it was very
the center of excellence doing it.
Exactly, a little bit disconnected, and you manage. And what happened is the share of online sales has increased. And instead of adding resources in the different teams in CMI, who's managing the data, for instance, e-commerce teams have grown. And all of a sudden, you had someone who was looking into data within the e-commerce team. And then people have done things a little different. Yeah, the way they thought it's right. And a lot of the people who moved into digital commerce had a digital background, not an offline background. So they didn't know different. So I think that is part of the reason why it has developed in a little different direction. So what happened today? So this is the usual movement. You have like a siloed team, and then the teams become bigger as a stage 2, and stage 3 is, okay, then organizations realize you cannot build an organization within the organization, and it starts getting back integrated. And then you start realizing, how do we integrate the data piece? And this is, I think, what Salim, you mentioned. Therefore, things are changing because organizations are realizing, okay, it doesn't work. If you treat it silo, you have to connect it. If you integrate the people, you also have to integrate the data structure and the data foundation.
And I think it's interesting, Boris, that you said before that you're an e-commerce leader that's not like that grew up within the business. So you were in key account management, trade marketing, etc. And the quote unquote typical e-commerce leader 5 years ago was someone that was like an e-commerce expert. Like we've gone, like e-commerce was a land of experts, and now it's become more a land of like more business generalists that you could seek becoming GMs in the future, whereas before it was kind of unimaginable.
Yeah, and the opposite, right? It's now unimaginable for a GM to not understand e-commerce.
Yes.
So it has become integral part of the experience.
Exactly. Yeah. By the way, for the people tuning in, which we have quite a few, remember you can ask questions, leave your comments. You can even disagree with us, by the way, in the comment section. Don't be shy. It's fine. Christine, I think you go next. No, I think we have the question that I have written down here is a pretty good one. So.
No, I want to go a little bit on AI. And last time, Salim, we had like this webinar. We're talking a lot about the role of AI in commerce and how important even the digital sell is going to be, not just for actually like the person, like the human person looking through the website, but also like overall for machine understanding and how you're showing up. So I was wondering, like, can you explain to our audience why you want people to do AI as like a support in commerce or in insights without having the data foundation?
I'll try, and you guys help me, and Boris helped me. But so I think the first project I saw coming on AI, the first brief was probably 12 months ago, and it was a brief very focused on the front end, like can you set up an agent that helps us get quick access to insights and everything, and I think people were kind of demoing that side of things. Reality is, agents, in my point of view, are pretty available today. It's not complex. You don't need necessarily to develop on your own, especially if you want to go fast. I think it just added so much more pressure on what you're training the LLM on. So, and I'll tell you like a basic example. If your database is not structured on UPCs or EAN, it's almost impossible to start to make like comparisons between the different like performance between different retailers. If your data set does not include a category coverage, the way you see it as a manufacturer, it's going to be very difficult to set a benchmark, because the LLM is not going to surface the kind of right insights. The additional point that AI is added as pressure point is speed of delivery of the data. So structure it's impossible, because the LM will surface wrong or hallucinations insights. So the first set is to get it right, and to surface the right things is to train it on things on a database that is structured. The second point is speed. And I see it in this way. So I think every evolution pushed us to more speed of delivery. So retail media in the past few years pushed us to deliver visibility data faster, just because you need to make quicker decisions. And let's remember that you're using, or most of manufacturers are trying to use AI to surface insights quicker, but the idea is also to take actions quicker, to gain a kind of competitive edge. And I think the next level is going to be automation of some of these actions quicker. So imagine a world where, there will be, agents taking actions on your behalf on content, and that's going to happen. Like, we're not talking science fiction here. We're talking about a reality that is not, I think, so far from now. So it added this pressure point on, like, you have like we had to move from like monthly to weekly years ago, then weekly to daily, and then daily to like multiple times a day. And when is the data delivered? Like, you cannot deliver it days after. It has to be delivered like next day, or sometimes even same day. Those are like pressure points. And those pressure points create another challenge and opportunity, is that we were talking about structuring the data. That takes time, like to clean, especially data that is generated and originated from online. So obviously you bring the challenge of, okay, you have two variables of the same equation, speed versus cleanness, if I may say. So if you increase the speed, you might lose a little bit of cleanness. And that's, I think, also where AI on the background, not like on a front end, could play an important role in automating all of that structuring on the fly. And I think that's where we are kind of going as an industry, into a world where we have the foundations, we trust the foundations are the accurate one, we have the speed so that I can be alerted and can be aware pretty quickly on what's happening and how I can win in my marketplaces or with my retailers. And then I can automate some of the actions early enough so that it creates, the right impact.
And just to follow up here, because I'm thinking on a very technical side of what you're saying, Salim, right? So you're going to train your AI on a specific set of data, which means also a specific architecture, as you said, like, here's how I see the category. And I guess like this is the moment where it seems what you're saying, it's inevitable that the companies need to have a point of view of what my data architecture is, have the internal kind of like hierarchies delivered, and then map all the external vendors, because usually you have multiple ones coming in onto them, which is something that's not happening right now, right? There is like an approximation of this in this kind of like channel equals that and that customer.
Yeah, I would say most manufacturers would have a strong point of view. Now, is the point of view similar between the online and offline? I'm not sure. And then sometimes manufacturers inherit whatever is imposed to them from vendors.
Yeah.
And that's the point I was saying, that we spent a lot of time solving early enough, because it's very hard. It's not hard because you cannot do it on day one. It's hard to maintain because the digital world is very dynamic. Every day you have hundreds of products in each category, hundreds of products out. So you have to find a way. So we started using AI for this specific case 10 years ago. And on the back end, of course, we developed specific models, and it was very hard. But I think it's going to accelerate more. And yeah, the topic you mentioned is very important, because without this, you cannot correlate if your different data assets cannot overlay in a seamless way.
And how do you see it, Boris? Like, also, since we were talking about the manufacturer and you happen to work in one, I was gonna ask you, like, what are the possibilities, maybe even right now, of AI if you have like the right data in place?
Yeah, the interesting part is everybody's always saying AI. Yeah, such a buzzword, but AI it's so many different layers. I think we all agree you need a strong data foundation, yeah, in order to then build on it. I think already there we discuss AI can help when it comes to structuring the data. Yeah, the opportunities today I see there is when it comes to certain attributes, mapping, certain GTINs with maybe ASINs from Amazon. I think there you have powerful tools leveraging AI in order to do the work. Yeah, in that case. I think another use case is, and it's a very simple one, today you visualize the data in a dashboard. Yeah, you click through it, you have a menu structure. You want to know, okay, what's my market share on a certain segment? Yes, instead of that, you can use kind of a chatbot to ask, okay, tell me what's the market share in that segment. And you even have a bit of a generative part in it when you say, okay, can you visualize it for me? And that's one. But I think the more sophisticated use of AI is when you build an environment architecture with different layers. So you have the data layer. Next one is you need certain tools. When I take the example of the digital shelf and we want to understand what to focus on, what's the next best action, yeah, you cannot just put an agent there. First, you need to look into simply statistics. What are the elasticities between the different KPIs? What does the regression look like? You need a regression model. And once you have this, yeah, this kind of data points, on top of that, you can start adding agents. The problem is, like you hire a new employee, yeah? You tell him, okay, analyze me the data. But if you don't give him the context, or he's not trained on the job, this is what I would call then hallucinating. It will make something up. So you need to give a lot of context about the data. So what data to look at, you need to give a frame. And I think it's just, Christine, you mentioned like this iceberg visual. Yes, I think the agent is just the tip of the iceberg. But if you want to have a strong agent, you need to build everything which is beneath the surface with all the different layers. And by the way, that's something which excites me a lot, because the opportunities are crazy, and it will automate and move entire processes, even decisions in the future, into the hands of the machines.
So how can we Shall I go, Daniel?
Go ahead.
I was thinking like...
I was going to ask a question, though. Eh?
What?
I was going to ask a question.
Okay, go.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that, like, okay, this is all great, but let's here on the podcast, we like to tell things as they are. So I was going to ask you guys if you could tell us any horror stories of, like, you were mentioning hallucinations, but other horror stories that happen when, bad data management.
So of course,
Salim,
I don't have any horror story of my own data sets, but
no, but more like what you've seen happen in companies and FMCG. Like, what happens when your data is not in place?
So think of it this way. As a manufacturer, you don't have unlimited resources. You have a certain set of people in charge of taking actions, and you have a certain number of hours every day. And that's not, you cannot stretch that. It's like you can keep hiring, but at some point there's someone from leadership who'll say, stop, and then we go back to the conversation about incrementality. But what I'm trying to say is, if you have a limited number of units to take actions, you want to point those units to the actions that will deliver more sales. And and that's where it becomes very important to have a good set of data in terms of accuracy, in terms of structure. So accuracy, if you're trying to solve a search problem, an organic search problem, and you have no idea whether this search problem. So first of all, are you measuring that search ranking the right way? If you're not, then like you go completely sidetrack, because you'll be thinking, okay, maybe if I optimize my content, it's going to be captured more by the algorithm, and you will be spending days, because these projects are heavy, because it has to go to the brand teams and like adjusting everything. So you're using units of resource for an action that is not going to deliver any value, and sometimes even could destroy value, because that product just needed fixing, like for example, from an availability point of view, which is the ceiling that you could have of, you can't be more visible than available. So yeah, I think I've seen a lot of money spent on retail media for products that were already on the top ranking organically.
Money wasted, basically.
Yes. So for me, that's like horrible enough to be quoted as an example. And that's like basically because of that. And then like the structure, it helps the correlation topic is immediately to see that your actions are delivering value. And that's the point where you can start to learn and avoid to like spending those units of resources in the wrong place. So I don't have like a specific example, but that's how I see things. And then I think that's how we should see things, because we already have, like as an industry, limited resources from a manufacturer point of view. So you want to make sure you're doing this. And tomorrow, as we're going to automate some of these actions, then relying on the data becomes even more important, because like you're asking an agent to do actions on your behalf, so you're losing a little bit. And that's what happened exactly with retail media when we started automation on like decisioning on retail media. We started to trust more the data, and that's where it can go either very right or very wrong.
Yeah, I can even share a story. Like specific stuff would be like giving some shopper data to AI without more context on exactly where you have low coverage versus the right coverage, and then you're getting some suggestions that are very strong, like this needs to be delisted. And then you don't understand what's happening, and it's just AI does not understand the statistical significance of what it's seeing, because you have not provided the whole context. So unless you kind of like clean everything up from the beginning in order to be able to feed it into a machine, then you're going to get some kind of like extreme decisions, even of like your pack architecture or your pricing, and whether you even need to have or not have products. And I'm wondering, like we're talking about this let's say iceberg, right? We've touched a little bit on what is the fundamentals. Like we know the tip is AI. Okay, what's below? We talked a little bit about accurate data now, Salim. And I guess like it's the governance of how that data gets in, who decides where it's mapped. How would you kind of like describe these foundation layers?
I was hoping we go to the governance side. I don't know, Boris, if you want to go first on this question, but because I've never worked within a manufacturer, so I kind of see it from the outside.
And what I can say is the governance, from my perspective, is the one which is most underestimated and one of the biggest pitfalls. And Daniel, you were asking also for some real examples. I think this is related, the governance piece, to one of my biggest failures in the past. Yeah. When it came to building the data infrastructure, as mentioned, nothing was there, and I was so excited to bring all the data in. So let's add a data source. It was about data first approach. Let's get everything we can get, and then add some more. And we kept adding data sources, but we didn't take care of the governance enough of the existing data source because things change. So what happens, you create a super complexity. You have a lot of data, you have your dashboards, and then you start getting the complaints from the end user because they look at the data and they keep sending you messages. Okay, this cannot be true. This is wrong. And you look into the data and you don't have a good governance process behind. It's also hard to understand what is it. Is it a problem with the data source? Is it a problem in the system? So what I'm saying is what my main learning is, not to start with the data because we have more data available than we can use. It starts with the application, what kind of insights you want to look at, and then be specific on the data sources. Use those data sources and spend enough time on the governance. Make sure that the data source, that the data processing 100% works. Because if you don't, you create things and you lose the credibility, you lose the buy-in of the entire organization, and then it fails. So in our case, we had to kind of reset it and really take a different approach. So more application first rather than, okay, let's put all the data we have in some kind of a data lake and see what we can do.
You remember I think I shared this on the first webinar, but this is something we've been discussing with Boris for a while. So it's like the pyramid, I think like that we need to reverse in the industry. So like I've seen a lot of projects going like, okay, we're gonna buy some data, then okay, we're gonna buy the infrastructure to put the data, then we say, okay, we're gonna hire data scientists to do some models on the data, and then we're gonna hire a Power BI to kind of put the data in a visual way or an agent from on an AI world. And then we stand and we say, okay, what do we do with this? So I think the reverse kind of pyramid where you start by the use case. I'd rather, and that's the advice I share with most of our partners, is let's start by listing maybe 10, maybe 20, maybe 30 applications that we know we have the people, we have the time, we have the resources, the ways of working to deliver on a daily, weekly, or whatever frequency we agree on. And from there, we start to build. So this is the use case we're trying to solve. And if you start this way, then when you get to the base of the pyramid, which is which data I need to select, then you're going to have a much clearer mind about the requirement or the minimum viable requirement for that data to solve your use case. And things become so clear. And that's where I like the method that Boris described, and like it inspired a lot of us in the industry is, it's better to start small, effective, be clear, and then deliver and demonstrate the value and then grow and like iterate, as opposed to like try to build like that huge machine that everyone dreams of that doesn't exist. And if you do it, you'll end up with kind of a beautiful machine that doesn't deliver value to the organization, just simply as that.
And you can always add. So it's much easier, as you say, you create something, get people excited, and then you easily get the comments. Hey, wouldn't it be great if we can look at that as well? And then, yes, you add another data source, and then you build. So it's kind of an iteration. You build something really, really nice, which is working, rather than having something which sounds incredible, but doesn't, as you say, Salim, doesn't deliver anything.
And I was going to say, like, we talked about like the quality of the data and how do you, and especially when it comes again back to commerce data, how can you work with that, like with the commerce data without like digital shelf standards?
So I'll start if that's okay. Yeah, so there are no standards in the industry today. Like, the way we try to look at things is okay, what is the actionability point? And is the standard answering that? And you think of like, if I pick search, for example, if you're tracking search in an omnichannel world, it has to be through all locations because search rank differs between different locations. If you want to capture the variation throughout the day, it has to be multiple times a day, as much as possible. And there's probably a number of what is the minimum number of times a day to capture the frequent or the changes intraday. And then, to make it actionable, I have to know against who I'm winning or losing. So I have to have my competitors' data well identified in terms of brands and SKUs and like products. And I have to understand also what brought them up the chain. Was it their content? Was it like paid? Was it they were better distributed? Or was it another factor? So, when you start to really think by the use case, then the standard becomes really clear. And you start to understand, like, okay, if I don't know against who, like if I have a vague idea on who I'm winning or losing against in my search, like maybe I know the brands, maybe not even, how can I action? Like, how can I start to understand like who of my competitors are doing a better job? How can I get inspired by what they're doing? How do I build a plan to compete? It's like, that's like, I think the standards become a response to what you're trying to achieve as actions in your daily work.
Right. We have, by the way, we have some. I think we'll do some recommendations for brand now, and then we have some questions from the audience, so we'll cover them as well. Just to let people know.
So perhaps, you guys could give it like, what would be your top 3 recommendations for brands when it comes to data and commerce data specifically and data management? Okay, Boris, do you want to go first?
Yes, I can go first. So I think, first of all, you need to build a strong partnership between the business and also the data teams. Yeah, this is one of my biggest learning. It can't be one or the other. You need to team up, and you need to also build the capability that the people managing the data have a certain understanding what's happening with the data, what's the actions being driven, and people from business need to understand, okay, what does it really take, to structure the data? Why does it take time? Why does it take effort? That's the foundation, I think. The next one would be, we talked about it. You need to have the data in one place. You need to have a data lake. You don't need to have all the data in there from the beginning, but you need to build the infrastructure and feed in the data you need for your use cases. And I think my third recommendation for a brand would then be, I mentioned already with the data that you start with use case, but my other one would be, I'm in a global role, but it doesn't make, from my experience, that much sense to build all the dashboards, the analytics, everything for the local markets. Yeah, it's good to provide the data in a easy and convenient way. It's also good to have certain high-level views, but in the end, it's about empowering the markets in an easy way to make use of the data. Because there is no one fits all, and we tried it in the past, trying to create like the one fits all solution to look at the data. It's not possible. You need certain standards, a bit of a framework, high level, but then markets know best what matters, and for them it's a huge help if you give them easy access to the data. So it's a bit of the democratizing the data in the organization.
Yeah, so huge, like I would repeat a lot of what you said, Boris, because I agree. I would just add maybe 1 or 2 points. For me, education is a huge topic, which embeds a little bit in your point number 2. But education, and like you talked about the partnership with the data teams. For me, it's education across the board within the organization. So I think, first of all, education to like high up, because like we need to be transparent about what it is and where it's not perfect and why it's not perfect and why we can still make decisions when sometimes it's not perfect. I think also there is an education bit on across different verticals in the business. So I know, and we've worked on some projects like this, that some very interesting data sets that could enhance or magnify whatever e-com is trying to do it can happen if you bring the two together. So obviously, like margins, some supply chain data, like some market, like generic market data, and there is a lot that can be done. But I think that can only happen if people are educated of what we're trying to achieve and what are the like overall results for the organization. So yeah, it's like for me, it's the data is an enabler, but the real objective that we're trying to do is collaboration internally and collaboration externally with the retailer. So collaboration comes with education. Like, this is what I'm trying to do, this is what I have, this is what I need from you, like external or internal, and this is where we want to go. So yeah, I would add, for me, that's a very critical point. The other one would be it's okay to start small and iterate. It's very okay. And I know, like, this might be counterintuitive to a lot of people, because they see what others are doing and they say, oh, I want to get there immediately. No, I think it's okay to kind of look at where you are today and say, okay, so what's the next step? So I can have a vision for in 12 months or 18 months, and that are like maybe 10 steps to get to that vision, and I'm going to take those steps one by one and iterate each time so that I'm going there. And this is, like, for me, a very important topic of vision does not necessarily equal like I have to do it today. It's like, what are the building blocks, and that's like the baby steps kind of theory or ways of progressing.
And that's a really good pass, right, for one of the questions that we have here.
Yeah. One of the questions, which from Sneha, she's asking, how do you manage leadership expectation for speed in delivering use cases versus designing for structured data?
I can go. Do you want me to go?
Yeah, you can go first, Joe.
So of course, I'm outsider. So we help those conversations, actually. Like, in the last 2 years, I would say, those conversations became more and more important, because obviously ecom became bigger and important source of growth. So some of our counterparts, they say, okay, I'm struggling to kind of make people understand what we're trying to do. And I think it's going back to what Boris said at the very beginning. We try to use the same language as offline, which is well understood. We try not to make it too complex. But yeah, I think it goes back. I think it's Jeff Bezos who said, like, as soon as I reach a certain level of accuracy, I feel it's okay to make decisions based on that, as opposed to spend my life waiting for the 100% accuracy, which will never happen, and then make no decision. So it's really getting to that level of, like, how do I get confident that I am accurate, good enough, and perfection is not reached yet. We are going there. We're here today, so we're not going to stay here forever. But where we are today is enough to make decisions and kind of progress and make actions, and like keep the leadership updated on where we are going to, like where we are going, and like what we are going to unlock as we go there, as new capabilities or new activations and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's not a simple answer, but I think it's about like being transparent on the direction, being transparent on what we have, being transparent on the actions, being transparent on the results, proven ROI on whatever is done. That's our, in my point of view, languages that leadership listens to.
Shall we do?
Yeah, just to add one thing, it's don't fake anything. I mean, if you have the data, be transparent, as you mentioned, huh? You have what you have, and you need to base the decisions on those kind of data points. Yeah, it's the best you can get. I think the mistake would be like pretending you have something you don't, because it will come back, huh? You will make the wrong decisions, and people will question. So that would be my build.
Shall we do the next one? I have here one from Troy, my friend Troy Townsend from Zitcha, who's asking, how are you normalizing the output of the data across the silos of media, merchandise, and marketing to make it valuable?
It's difficult, and I be honest, we have not. It's too much. We have not harmonized all data from all those different parts. I mean, I could go on. No? How do you harmonize it with R&D? How do you harmonize it with the supply? Yeah, it goes on. You go step by step, as Salim said. Go step by step. So in our case, for instance, a data point we are using a lot on the digital commerce, digital shelf is ratings, reviews. Yeah, so now also the R&D is using this data source for product development, formula development. So, but we took it from a use case perspective. Yeah, so how can we develop better products? Okay, there's a great data source with on the rating reviews, so we start connecting. And are we there? No, it's a long journey. But go by the use case where to have the most impact, and then step by step we are connecting.
Fully aligned.
Yeah. Oops. So shall we do? Look, I just saw I can actually bring up the questions here. That's cool. So
this is very nice.
yeah. So from Aide, who's actually from supply chain. If we'd only known this before, she says there's always trade-offs to competition, collaboration. How in the e-commerce space do you think manufacturers and retailers should compete as they innovate to go ahead? And how should they collaborate within an industry to minimize complexity and cost for the end consumer? Now, this question is obviously covering more than data, but I don't know if you have any final thoughts on this.
Silence in the room.
It's a broad question. It's a very broad question that taps into, like, we should create another webinar about.
It would be a good one. I mean,
Yeah.
the narrative or the constant clash between retailers and brands would be a fascinating topic to talk about.
Yes, but I can try to answer a little bit from my perspective. I think what I've always appreciated in digital commerce, much more than before, is that we are very collaborative in the industry itself. When you go to events or something, I exchange a lot with peers, also with contacts from the trade. Okay, how can we do it better? How can we bring down the supply costs? So what's needed? So what are the requirements for packaging, for the product? What's a good consumer experience? Because we're all trying to achieve the same thing. Yes, there's a certain level of competition as well. So this you need to balance. But in the end, specifically when you're in a relationship like a brand and retailer, co-creation can be very powerful, and looking into it. I remember with one of the trade partners, we really looked into the logistics. So where are additional costs appearing, and where do we create consumer frustration? And it was a lot related to the packaging topic, that you had leakage on bottles. So it had to be additionally prepped in certain warehouses. So by coming together and looking at the end-to-end supply chain, we found good solutions. It was a win-win-win, because on the manufacturing side, we were saving money. On the trade side, we were saving money, and we had a much better experience for the consumer in the end. So I think definitely it's worth looking into partnering.
So we can say that the fact that in e-commerce no one has really figured it all out is an advantage for the business, because then it can give you new outlets of collaboration with retailers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, look, good advice for brands as well. And if they want to like unlock and improve their relationship with retailers, why not go to the e-commerce teams and maybe start there? Great, guys. Well, thanks so much. By the way, remind the people that are connected that if they've enjoyed this, which I'm sure you have, you can, using the same link of the event on LinkedIn, you can rewatch it later and as many times you like. And this will come out also as an audio and video podcast next Wednesday. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, guys. Good conversation.
Thank you very much. It was great.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cool.